Welcome to the Administrative Order 2021-25 public hearing for the operating permit renewal for the Vicinity Energy in Trenton. This hearing is being recorded. We'll be providing information about the facility, the permit renewal process, and opportunities to provide input. We will not be responding to comments or questions during this hearing. We encourage participants to provide comments in writing to info@vicinityenergytrenton.com, and we will respond in writing during the permit renewal process. There will be an opportunity to provide comments verbally at the end of the presentation. These will be recorded, and again, we will respond in writing during the permit renewal process. I'm AJ Jablanowski of Epsilon Associates, an environmental consulting firm supporting Vicinity. We have support staff monitoring the email address info@vicinityenergytrenton.com. If there are connection or other technical issues, please let us know through that email, and we'll do what we can to resolve the issues. Today's agenda includes a description of facility information, facility equipment, air emissions and controls, permitting history and regulations, environmental justice definitions, rules and applicability, and how to submit comments. I'm joined today by Gabrielle D'Arcangelo of Epsilon, helping me with technical support, and Jessica Hartley, environmental manager for Vicinity. Vicinity is located at 320 South Warren Street in Trenton. The facility generates 6 megawatts of electricity and provides hot water and chilled water to over 12 million square feet of Trenton. Typically, generated electricity is used to support the facility's own operations so that Vicinity can operate independently of the grid. During grid failure, Vicinity serves as an emergency energy supply. The facility is capable of operating year-round. The facility's main equipment includes one stationary reciprocating engine and 2 boilers, one of which recovers heat from the engine exhaust. The other boiler operates independently. Both boilers can be fired with natural gas or oil to ensure continued operation if natural gas supply is low. The engine can operate on oil alone or a blend of about 10% oil and 90% natural gas for lower emissions. Other on-site equipment includes 7 storage tanks, 1 exhaust stack, and the facility's exhaust handling and emissions control devices. The role of the catalytic oxidizer in reducing carbon monoxide and volatile organic compounds will be discussed later in the presentation. Combustion of natural gas in the internal combustion engine generates power and heat. The power is used to meet the facility's electricity demands while operating. Because Vicinity is a combined heat and power plant, the hot exhaust gas produced by the engine is directed through the catalytic oxidizer to boiler number 2, where it increases the temperature of hot water. This hot water then can supply more heat to surrounding buildings. The utilization of waste heat makes a combined cycle plant like Vicinity more efficient than a simple cycle plant, which would have to burn more fuel in order to generate the same amount of heat and power. Both boilers 1 and 2 have their own fuel input. Boiler exhaust is released through the stack, which is 164 feet tall. Vicinity also has a backup compressor, which allows the facility to continue operating during grid failure. It combusts diesel fuel in order to compress air, which allows the main equipment to maintain the correct fuel-to-air ratio for operation. Usually this is achieved using electricity from the grid. The backup compressor engine has its own separate exhaust. Burning any type of fuel to generate heat or electricity also releases air emissions. As a combined heat and power plant, Vicinity is able to use less fuel and create fewer emissions than simple cycle facilities. To further reduce emissions, Vicinity has a catalytic oxidizer to treat exhaust from the engine before it reaches the heat recovery boiler. This device removes 93% of carbon monoxide and 67% of volatile organic compounds, converting them to steam and CO2. Emissions of other pollutants, such as particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, and sulfuric acid mist, are minimized through the use of cleaner fuels in the form of pipeline quality natural gas and ultra-low sulfur distillate. Carbon dioxide emissions are inherent in fuel combustion and are minimized by using combined heat and power to increase efficient fuel use. Vicinity was issued its first Title V permit in 2001 and has applied for renewal every 5 years as required. The facility is currently operating under a renewal issued in 2011, since approval of the 2016 renewal application was delayed. The renewal application we are presenting today was submitted on August 26, 2020, and deemed administratively complete on October 6, 2020. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, or NJDEP, is currently checking the application for technical completeness before approval. Once an application is approved, NJDEP issues a permit, which includes operating conditions and emissions limits that ensure the facility is in compliance with the provisions of Title V of the Federal Clean Air Act, the federal rules promulgated at 40 CFR 70, and the state regulations promulgated at NJAC Title VII, Chapter 27, Subchapter 22. These rules require existing facilities that have the potential to emit major amounts of air contaminants to obtain an operating permit, which specifies the air pollution control requirements that apply to the facility, the maximum amount of air pollutants the facility can emit, and the necessary monitoring, record keeping, and reporting requirements to assure compliance with these conditions. The facility is subject to New Jersey air pollution control regulations codified in NJAC 727, subchapters 1 through 34 as applicable. The facility is also subject to federal regulations, including national emissions standards for hazardous air pollutants, new source performance standards, and prevention of significant deterioration. As part of the New Jersey air regulations, the facility's emissions units must also meet New Jersey state-of-the-art requirements. The purpose of these regulations is to improve air quality and protect public health by limiting emissions from facilities at which combustion or other pollutant-generating processes occur. In addition to emissions limits, an operating permit includes monitoring, record keeping, and reporting requirements that prove whether a facility is adhering to the relevant limits and conditions. Vicinity's permit will include provisions to require testing and monitoring consistent with NJAC 7:27-22.18 and record keeping of tested and monitored parameters according to NJAC 7:27-22.19. Specifically, the Vicinity facility monitors the fuel consumption of the engine, the fuel consumed by the boilers, and the total hours of turbine operation in order to calculate the emissions of each pollutant. These calculated emission rates are then compared to permit limits to document compliance. Vicinity must also monitor and document the operating hours and fuel oil sulfur content of the emergency diesel compressor, which is only used during grid failure, to document its compliance with the permit conditions. On September 20th, 2021, NJDEP Commissioner Sean LaTourette issued Administrative Order Number 2021-25. This order, New Jersey's State Environmental Justice Law, codified at NJSA 13:1D-158, and the New Jersey Executive Order Number 23, All address the fact that New Jersey's low-income communities and communities of color have been historically subjected to a disproportionately high number of environmental and public health stressors. To further the promise of environmental justice in these disproportionately impacted areas, the orders require that facilities offer all New Jersey communities a meaningful opportunity to participate in the decision-making that affects their environment, communities, homes, and health. The regulations set forth in NJSA 13:1D-158 define environmental or public health stressors as sources of environmental pollution, including concentrated areas of air pollution, mobile sources of air pollution, contaminated sites, transfer stations or other solid waste facilities, recycling facilities, scrap yards, and point sources of water pollution, including water pollution from facilities or combined sewer overflows, or conditions that may cause potential public health impacts in the overburdened community. New Jersey's environmental justice orders are applicable when permitting a new facility, renewing a permit, or expanding operations at a facility in an overburdened community. NJDEP is working to develop, propose, and promulgate the necessary regulations in order to implement the environmental justice law. However, Executive Order 23 and Administrative Order 2021-25 allow the NJDEP to immediately take further action to ensure that the spirit and intent of the environmental justice law are realized. The environmental justice law defines an overburdened community as any census block group that meets one of the following three criteria. At least 35% of the households qualify as low-income households, at or below twice the poverty threshold as determined by the United States Census Bureau. At least 40% of the residents identify as minority or as members of a state-recognized tribal community, or at least 40% of the households have limited English proficiency, which means without an adult who speaks English very well, according to the United States Census Bureau. Based on this definition and the list of overburdened communities identified by NJDEP and published on January 19, 2021, Vicinity Energy is located in an overburdened community. This map, available through NJDEP, shows the criteria that are met by each census tract in Trenton. Administrative Order 2021-25 requires that facilities seeking permits or renewals in overburdened communities must have comment periods of at least 60 days, which may be extended by an additional 30 days upon written request by members of the overburdened community, indicating that an extension is necessary to provide necessary additional information. The order also requires that any facility seeking a permit or renewal in an overburdened community hold a public hearing in a manner determined by NJDEP as consistent with the environmental justice law, so as to maximize community member participation. This hearing is being conducted to support compliance with the administrative order, and we thank you for your participation. Additionally, the order requires all applicant facilities to respond to and address the concerns raised by individuals in the overburdened community during the public comment process, including, but not limited to, requiring additional analysis deemed necessary by NJDEP to enable its review of the subject application and the evaluation of the concerns raised during the public comment period. As stated earlier, we will not be answering questions or responding to comments during this hearing. We encourage participants to provide comments by email to info@vicinityenergytrenton.com, and we will respond in writing during the permit renewal process. There will now be an opportunity to provide comments verbally for those who prefer. The comments will be recorded. Vicinity will submit responses to these comments to NJDEP as part of the permit renewal, and NJDEP will publish those responses publicly. If you would like to provide verbal comments, please raise your hand using the Teams feature. If you are using the Teams computer program, that's an option using the Reactions button. And if you're using the web browser version, that's a button that looks like a hand. We will note who has requested the ability to comment verbally, and we will then call on each person and unmute them to allow them to provide comments. Verbal comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If your comment exceeds that, or if any computer, microphone, or internet connectivity issues disrupt your opportunity to speak, please submit your comment in writing to info@vicinityenergytrenton.com. As stated, Vicinity will respond to all verbal and written comments after the end of the comment period as part of the permit renewal process. So please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak. We'll give that process about a half a minute. At this time, we have received no requests to provide verbal comment into the record. We'll give that a few more seconds. Okay, no requests have been made. Thank you. And this concludes the Administrative Order 2021-25 public hearing for the operating permit renewal for Vicinity Energy in Trenton. We'll be ending the meeting now.